So I have a couple of modifications that I want to do on this bike, and one of them could get a little bit pricey, and so it made me wonder, how much have I actually spent on this bike so far? I have previously made a video about running costs and servicing. Today I'm going to talk about maintenance and modifications. So how much have I actually spent on this bike so far? Well, I had a look and this is what I found. So back in 2018 when I bought this bike, the bike itself cost me 1900 quid. One of the first things that I did to this bike was I fitted a tail tidy, because we all know that the standard number plate holder is terrible. So I bought an EvoTech tail tidy and that cost me 60 quid. That tail tidy then showed up just how much the number plate needed to be replaced. So we chucked another tenner at it and replaced that number plate. And when you lose your when you lose your standard number plate holder, you also lose your reflector, and you do need a reflector for the MOT. So I bought a pair of reflectors. They're about 2 quid each, and that for 2018 was about as far as we went. And then 2019 comes around and Rafiki needs an MOT. Unfortunately, he failed his MOT on fork seals, and it cost 145 quid for the garage to replace his fork seals. That was 2019, and I think that was the only maintenance and modification costs that we incurred in 2019. So there we are 1 year into our biking journey, and we've just discovered that biking could be an expensive hobby. Now right now I feel for a friend of mine, because he's got a bike, he's had this bike for about 10 months, he's due an MOT very soon, and he's going to need fork seals. It's all part of the journey, isn't it? It's all part of having biking as a hobby. So I feel for him, but he'll get the job done, and he'll stay on the road. But there we are, it's 2019, just got an MOT, £145 lighter, but I'm just happy that we've got an MOT and that we can carry on biking. That was kind of it for 2019. Fast forward to 2020, and I did spend a little bit more money on this bike. So in 2020, I decided to carbon wrap the exhaust. Now, I had previously fitted this bike with an aftermarket exhaust. It looked amazing, it sounded amazing at tickover, but riding this bike with that exhaust was actually quite terrible. So I wanted to go back to a stock exhaust, but I didn't really like the look of the stock exhaust. That's where the carbon wrap idea came from. Now, when it came time to take this exhaust off the bike, the first thing I noticed was that the nuts holding the exhaust onto the engine were heavily corroded. There was not much left of them. So I had to buy a kit that included the nuts, the studs and an exhaust seal. That cost me 13 quid. And then there was the carbon wrap itself, which only cost a £5. And along with these stainless steel rivets here, which cost £3, I was able to make the stock exhaust look 100 times better for the grand sum of 21 quid. Next up was the battery, because back then the bike was a bit of a lazy starter and I wanted to address that issue. So I replaced the battery, only this isn't the battery that I originally replaced. No, first time around I actually replaced the old knackered battery with a stock battery. So here we are, we've carbon wrapped the exhaust, sorted out the exhaust manifold nuts and studs, and we've replaced the battery. Only it's 2020 and the world got COVID, everything got shut down, my CBT ran out and I wasn't able to get another one, which meant that Rafiki's MOT also ran out. So for about 12 months. I didn't ride, he sat in the garage doing nothing. Let's fast forward to 2021. 2021 comes around and I decide, right then, let's get back on a bike. Let's get Rafiki sorted out, get him an MOT and get back on the road. So then it was time to have a look at just what I needed to do to get this bike back on the road. And there was quite a lot to do in the end. So carrying on where we'd left off in 2020, we'd just replaced the battery and next we replaced the starter motor, which is in there somewhere, you can't see it, but it cost 34 quid. Next up, I decided that whilst we're checking the bike over, let's check out the brake pads. We've had the bike 3 years at this point and we'd never checked the pads. So I took out the rear pads and had a look at those, took out the front pads and had a look at those, and all 4 of them needed to be replaced. And all 4 of them cost me 26 quid. Then, having done the brake pads, it seemed to make sense to do the brake fluid. So tried to replace the brake fluid, only the master cylinder wouldn't bleed, so I had to get a master cylinder rebuild kit. 37 quid. And whilst I was up the front here, I decided to fit a yoke protector. That was a tenner. And then randomly, the tail light decided to stop working. No idea why. Looked at it, tried to fix it, it was dead. So that was an eBay replacement for 16 quid. So then we go in for the MOT and we fail on fork seals again. Yes, fork seals again. Turns out that the garage that had done the fork seals for the previous MOT had fitted new seals over the top of a damaged fork tube. Yes, the right hand fork tube was pitted. The left one was absolutely fine, but the right one was pitted. Seems as though someone had replaced one fork tube in the past, which then left me having to replace the other. So the fork tube itself was 154 quid, and then you've got the seals that were about 30 and some oil that was about 20, and all in all, this job, to redo this job, cost me 204 quid. So although that cost us 204 quid, it did get us back on the road for 2021. 2022, we didn't seem to spend any money on this bike, and in 2023, just did a couple of jobs. We replaced the screen with a smoke screen because we no longer needed an L plate, and I took the opportunity to replace the bolts as well because the old ones were plastic and a little bit chewed up. Then I replaced that stock battery, which had proven to be pretty terrible, so I got a Motobat battery, gel battery. That was 40 quid. And the last thing was, when a friend of mine lost his bike key and he only had one bike key, kind of spooked me a little bit. So I bought a new key, blank key, for a tenner and got it cut, which was a fiver. That was probably one of the last jobs that we did. So there we have a total for the cost of the bike, the maintenance, the modifications, but not including servicing and running costs, a grand total of £2,614, which is far more reasonable than I thought it was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be that reasonable. When you think about the fact that I've had the bike 6 years, take off the initial cost of the bike, and my modifications and maintenance have cost over 6 years, it's cost 700 quid. I do have a few other mods planned, like I say, but to see that I've spent 700 quid on modifications and maintenance over 6 years, yeah, I'll bloody take that.